What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Yesterday, there was a ton of stuff that went on. We did, of course, find out about Nintendo's overall financial numbers and all of the sales units and how many systems the Switch has sold. Did that in a video yesterday, so if you missed that one, go check it out so you can kind of get up to date on all of the sales figures right now for the Switch and the different games, including Pokemon, which... well, that was an interesting situation to see how many that sold. It was quite a few. Today, though, we're going to go over a little bit of the Q&A from yesterday that did take place. Nintendo had an investors briefing, answered some questions, and they even talked about the legendary Switch Pro, or a Switch mid-gen refresh kind of thing. And, well, we'll go over what they said here. Also, EA had their own financials, and, well, it turns out... you don't necessarily need loot boxes in a game for it to do well, as Jedi Fallen Order kind of showed us. We're going to go over all of that and more today, guys. As always, if you enjoyed these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. I appreciate you guys doing that. Like I said, over the past month or so, has helped out a lot, so I do appreciate it. And if you're brand new here, hit that subscribe button down below so you can stay up to date with all of the gaming news going on in the gaming world. We're actually going to go back to Stadia a bit today to start off with, specifically because they continue to respond after we'll say the frustrations that have been boiling over right now on their own subreddit, where people are not happy with how quiet and seemingly how passive they've seen. Like, you figured Stadia and Google would be very aggressive with this service going up against, well, Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony. Instead, they've been very quiet and tame, really, overall, but they had some things to say, and this quote in particular was a bit surprising. "We understand the desire to hear more specifics on the games. After all, that is what it is about, the games. Of course, not all 120 titles will be announced by the Stadia team, as we leave it up to the publishers to make the announcement about their IP/games and which platforms will appear on, just as we will do with the exclusive content coming to Stadia." And that was in an interview with Games Industry. And the thing that a lot of people are looking at here is it does really seem like they're taking a very laid-back approach to this whole situation and trying to break onto the scene right now with the big three happening. Obviously, Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft really going into a new generation where they're going to launch their Series X and S or whatever else they do there with Microsoft, and the PlayStation 5, where Sony puts out a logo and boom, it has this massive Instagram record. Yeah, now obviously Nintendo is selling massive amounts of games. You figure Stadia would roll in and be very aggressive themselves. That's not the case, though. In fact, they're like, oh yeah, it's up to publishers. They'll tell us about it whenever they're ready. It's like, well, why don't you do your own Stadia Connect thing again and try to bring in publishers and say, hey, what do you guys have? Let's go ahead and do our own little live stream thing here, and we'll announce a bunch of cool stuff for all of the people who have bought in as early adopters. Keep in mind, everyone right now is bought in with at least $130. You feel like they would push a bit more, but at least for now, it's up to the publishers. Also, Devil May Cry 3 SE is coming to the Switch on the 20th of February, and I gotta say, it looks like they're putting some work in. They even took to Twitter again for another reveal. Remember, they had 3 different dates, I believe, where they're gonna do different reveals on new things that were gonna be in this version of Devil May Cry 3. We talked about the style switching before, and now it looks like they're introducing a much easier weapon switching. Before, you could kind of switch weapons. You had to you had to preemptively choose, I think, up to 4, 2 ranged and 2 melee, and it looks like now they're just saying, hey, anything in your inventory, you can just switch between it. They had ZR and ZL depending on melee or ranged, and then you could also bring up like a radial that you could pick as well while you are fighting and I guess doing combos, and you'll be able to string together some pretty cool stuff. And yeah, I gotta give them credit. While this is Devil May Cry 3, and it's a game that I've beaten countless times, I am interested again because of the extra stuff they're adding in, because you can kind of think of the extra combos and stuff that you can do in specifically the Switch version. But we'll look out. I believe they have another announcement in a week and a half, 2 weeks or so, and we'll see what the last thing is they have for us before release on the 20th. Oh, and just to try to pull people in after the debacle of last year, the ESA put out a statement on behalf of their E3, their big E3 trade show, saying that they had improved security all around their website. In fact, they're not even really storing much data when it comes to people actually signing up, especially with the press. Remember last year, everyone's address and phone numbers and names and everything just got out there online. And that was a big thing, because there was a lot of people in the press and media from large websites and media establishments, all kinds of places that were sending people there. Everyone's information got out into the public, and it looks like they're trying to do stuff to say, hey, don't worry, we got this figured out. But like, once you've kind of broken that trust, and they even say they're trying to win back trust, I feel like people are just less and less inclined in general, and now they also have to worry about their security, and it's just E3 is in trouble. Oh man. And of course Sony's not even going, so it's just there's less of a pull to actually go to E3 anymore. I mean, you can just wait for a Nintendo Direct or a State of Play, or I guess Inside Xbox, but even that's like, but still, going to E3 seems like more of a hassle than it's even worth anymore. And guys, some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start with this Animal Crossing Switch. I had talked about this a few times now. I'm like, they're gonna have one. I thought they would have done a Switch Lite, but it looks like they're just going for the regular hybrid Switch, which I mean, it kind of makes sense for them considering they get more money from it at $300 as opposed to, I guess, $200 on the Switch Lite, but they also have to kind of make the dock look all nice and everything. So there is some extra work there that's involved. Also the Joy-Cons, but it looks like they'll be selling those Joy-Cons separately, at least in Japan for now. But here's a bunch of images of this system, and it does look really, really good. The back is textured as well, has some pretty cool etchings there on the back of it. And I mean, just the Joy-Con colors look nice. Like they have that kind of that springtime look to it. I mean, I know Animal Crossing is out March 20th alongside of this system at $300. Does not appear that the game comes with it, by the way, so you'll be picking up the game next to it. But as soon as this went up on Twitter, because they just dropped it on Twitter, the internet exploded. People started ordering this. This thing's going to be gone so fast. If it's not sold out yet, it's not going to be much longer. GameStop started tweeting about it. I think Best Buy tweeted about it. It was just all over the place. And I've told people before, Animal Crossing is big. I think people don't realize it's quietly large, I guess the best way you could say it, because when that comes out, that is going to be a 10 million unit seller without much issue. So I understand why there is a themed system, and I guess they just wanted to unveil it closer to launch as opposed to doing it like, I don't know, at the beginning of January or something. I guess it makes sense to get outside of that holiday period where they can start building up hype for its release. Also on the Nintendo Australia site that did talk about this special edition, they also listed a bunch of features that I hadn't seen listed anywhere else. Now, I know we had a pretty extended look during the Treehouse at Animal Crossing, and people have like dissected the footage and looked all over it and all of that, big analysis all over YouTube, but they did list some features that included up to 4 people playing on the same screen, so I assume the screen itself you'll basically all be stuck together on the same screen. I don't think they're going to split it into fourths. It's probably how they showed it at E3, and you can actually do up to 8 people joining in through wireless or online play. That's pretty cool. I like the idea of having 4 people being able to sync up controllers and play directly on the same Switch. Now, I'm wondering how it's going to look when you're doing portable, if you set up in tabletop mode. I guess you can make that happen, although I feel like everything's going to be pretty small, but I mean, there are games that do 4 people on the same screen. I believe there's one, I think it's the Virtual Racing, that does 8 people, and it's in like handheld mode. So we've seen some ridiculous stuff. Animal Crossing is probably not gonna be that crazy, but hey, I love the idea of this local play going on. Of course, if you want to do multiple Switches, you'll need multiple game cards for it. I think everyone expects that. And the special edition Switch here looks very, very good. I get why Animal Crossing fans are very excited for this, and it's cool to see all of this kind of coming together here as we roll into March. Again, we're still a little further away from the release, and you could still get a direct at some point to go over some other features specifically just for Animal Crossing. Either way though, look for that March 20th. It's going to do, I think, pretty well overall. I mean, they're even attaching a system to it. Hopefully those Joy-Cons leave Japan, because I know there's a lot of people who just want those Joy-Cons. Otherwise, get ready to import those on like Amazon Japan. They're also going to have a few carrying cases as well. So yeah, Nintendo is going full out. Seriously, they're going big right now for Animal Crossing, and it makes sense based on the sales of things like the 3DS game. Next up, let's talk about Nintendo and the Nintendo Switch Pro, the Switch revision, the mid-gen refresh. It's something we've been hearing about for feels like a couple years now. It keeps getting brought up by like the New York Times and Digitimes and a couple other places, but it is in the news quite a bit, like more so than you'd think for something that we've really never heard anything from Nintendo about. We of course heard about the Switch Mini at the time, which turned into the Switch Lite well ahead of time, and that was supposed to be next to a Switch Pro of some kind. Well, 2020, I guess, was the year that some people were thinking it would happen. But Nintendo shot these rumors down pretty quickly during the investors Q&A. Now, this is different from what they would say to the media or the press. They can say whatever they want to the media or press and then do it something completely different tomorrow, like the next day. But when you talk to your investors, you got to be pretty straight up with them or you can get yourself into some trouble. And that's why they word things in specific ways when talking to their investors. Things like, oh, we won't have any new hardware at E3. And then after E3, like a month later, they announce the Switch Lite, right? That's kind of how that works because they're technically not lying or misinforming there. They're just saying nothing at E3. Who knows after that? Well, let's take a look at what they had to say to their investors because it was pretty straightforward, I think. Regarding Nintendo Switch, we believe that it is important to continue to communicate the appeal of both Nintendo Switch systems and expand the installed base. Please note that we have no plans to launch a new Nintendo Switch model during 2020. They didn't say fiscal year 2020. They just said flat out 2020. Like, that's it. Just 2020, no new hardware for like any type of revision like a Switch Pro, no advertised revision. And I say advertised revision because they could still change out parts like as needed, right? Like maybe they need a different type of like wireless LAN chip in there and then, okay, a different one goes in because that's what's available. There's also a possibility that the actual chip itself gets changed out at some point if NVIDIA gets more efficient ones like we saw with the silent revision from before. If you remember that, where we got the Switch in the red box and it had better battery life. Wasn't a boost in performance from what we can tell until like hackers or whoever gets a chance to unlock that chip and maybe overclock it, but it gave us better battery life. And sure, I guess that wouldn't count as a Pro necessarily, and that's something they could still do. I wouldn't mind seeing them make the Switch Lite even more efficient with a new chip and getting that thing better battery life, because it's still strange that the battery life in that one is worse than the regular Switch now that's being sold, the V2, if you will. But yeah, I mean, to me, it looks pretty straightforward here. Sure, Nintendo could change their mind, plans change, but they would at that point have to explain to their investors why they told them before that there would be no new hardware, especially if it is in development and production is set to start soon, because trust me, the New York Times, whoever would be on top of that and would report it, and then there'd be some problems for Nintendo for what they said here. But we'll see. I'm not expecting anything this year at this point. I guess 2021, although we might have said, did we say that in 2018, then 2019, then 2020, now 2021? I don't know. Hey, eventually a new Switch is going to come out either way, right? Next up, let's talk about EA and their own financial report, because they had some things to say about Jedi Fallen Order. Something I was really hoping was that this game would do well, because it's completely different from what EA's been doing recently, which are mostly live services, microtransactions, loot boxes, everything that's been frustrating gamers quite a bit, right? This generation anyway, where it really started to get bad. I mean, look at Battlefront 2. That was the whole thing. They've started to recover a bit because they changed their core strategy with that game where loot boxes were affecting gameplay badly. And it has kind of recovered and come back a bit now. But Jedi Fallen Order, a game that's full single player, no multiplayer, how would this have done? Well, we kind of know now because they told us that it beat expectations. Now you can see here Daniel Ahmed, who covered the EA call extensively, and we'll look at some of his tweets. Make sure you follow him if you want to kind of keep up to date on any of the financial stuff in the gaming industry there. He says, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order is expected to sell 10 million units by March 31st, 2020, according to EA, beating original expectations of 6 to 8 million units. Strong performance for the game solidifies demand for high-quality story games. And I will agree with that. I think that is amazing to see that. For one, that means we probably will get a sequel to Fallen Order, at least with Respawn doing another Star Wars game in general. Might not be like Fallen Order 2 or something like that, but to me, it's pretty straightforward. They'll be doing another Star Wars game. Hopefully, once again, EA gets away from it. Back off. Go do what you got to do to FIFA. Leave Star Wars and Respawn alone. Let them do their thing here, because they're onto something. Look, Jedi Fallen Order came out. It was still kind of buggy. It came out and there were some glitches and buggy and some jank, if you will, to it, but they have been patching it, and for the most part, from what we're used to from EA with Star Wars games, it was great. It was better than pretty much everything else they've done recently, so it's awesome to see that it performed this well, because it should make EA turn around and go, oh, okay, so maybe we should do more of those. Oh, also, they talked about the Switch. It was pretty funny. They seem impressed with how the Switch is doing, but they also are still unsure if they should be on the Switch Mostly because, according to them, the best-selling games on the Switch are Nintendo products. Yeah, I mean, Nintendo's giving people a reason to buy the Switch, and then when it gets to a certain threshold, which it's at 52 million right now, that's pretty high, you would assume third parties would start to come in and, present their games so that they can sell those to the install base. Nintendo's strategy is to give third parties and publishers a reason to be there with a large install size. So you think eventually EA would show up, but they still seem very hesitant on the Switch. I'm getting to the point now where I think the Switch could sell 100 million and EA would kind of be like, I don't know, should we put Sims over there yet? And in our last bit of news, talk about The Outer Worlds that is going to the Switch. We have a date for it. It is March 6th. This, of course, is from Obsidian and the private division, and it was interesting to see this get announced for the Switch last year. It surprised some people, but when I played it on the Xbox One X, there were times where I looked at it and I said, okay, this looks kind of like an old Fallout game. Like, visually, it's not like over-the-top impressive or anything to that degree, but we don't have any type of Fallout game on the Switch, so pretty cool to see them make the push to make this happen. And there's only one issue. When they showed the box art, if you look at the top, it says there's no game cartridge at all. It is just going to be a voucher. Think of like Wolfenstein Youngbloods as a quick example. You're going to open it up and there will just be a piece of paper with a code on it, and that's it. So because of that, I don't really see any reason to go out and buy it boxed. I mean, I guess you get a case, an extra case with some cover art. So okay, I mean, it'd be neat if they threw something else in there, whether it's like a map or a poster or anything, a claw, I don't know, something, but we'll see if that does happen. Otherwise, you're just buying just a case with nothing in it. That is a shame. I guess it's just the private division. Maybe they have like a pretty strict budget and they couldn't fit it onto a 16 gigabyte cartridge, because if you can't get that file size down to that point, a 32 gigabyte cartridge is fairly expensive. Keep in mind, we just recently saw it used for The Witcher 3, and I still have a feeling Nintendo subsidized that in some way to get The Witcher 3 on the Switch. So if Nintendo's not willing to help out with it, I mean, I at least understand why they might have been like, well, it's either it's all digital or it's nothing, and the reason they want it on store shelves is so they can have some extra exposure by being in, the Walmarts, the Targets, the GameStops, and not just on the eShop. There's also people who might want to use their trade-in store credit and other ways to get it as well, gift cards, all kinds of stuff. So it is a shame, and it does make me kind of look at that and go, really? Come on. But I guess that's just where they are with those cartridges still being a bit too expensive. The game's still good. I liked it actually quite a bit, and I do recommend you playing it if you wanted to get it on the Switch. I don't think this should keep you from getting it. It is just a shame to see. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Pyro saying, imagine buying Google Stadia and expecting to be happy with it. There were people who bought it and they were very excited, but I look at Google Stadia and I don't know who they're targeting with it, because if they're targeting gamers, they already have consoles and they can already play the games that are on Stadia outside of Guilt, right? Guilt's like the big one. That's the one where it's like, well, I have to have Stadia for it, but like, do you really have to have Stadia to play Guilt? Like, is Guilt that compelling for you to go, well, I need to go spend $130 to get this controller and this pass and this Chromecast Ultra? No, it really doesn't feel that way. Like when the free version comes out, whenever, then you can just buy Guilt and technically play it in your browser. But like, I look at Stadia as a utility rather than a game platform at this point. Like I said, to rent games makes a ton of sense, right? $5, your browser loads up, you can play the game for 24 or 48 hours or something, like you would rent a movie to stream. That makes sense, but buying $60 games and it's like, it's all streaming and I don't think we're there yet, and unfortunately, Stadia is it's going to be left out to dry, I think. I am really concerned that Stadia will not make it beyond the end of this year, especially with the way that Google is kind of treating it right now, being very passive and not at all aggressive. But maybe things will change as we get further into this year. We'll have to see. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit the like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about today, whether it's that Animal Crossing Switch system. It looks good. For Animal Crossing fans, I get it. You probably already bought it. I think that's fine, because that's great to see that they did a themed Switch there for Animal Crossing. Just Nintendo, don't forget about doing these themed Switch systems when Metroid Prime 4 comes around, because I'm going to need one of those goes. And then also, what do you think about Nintendo saying no Switch hardware, no new Switch hardware this year, meaning no Switch Pro? Do you think they are lying to investors and they have one chalked up, or you think they're looking towards 2021 for some sort of revision or new Switch system? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.